Hi, I'm Kenzie. Welcome back to my podcast. If you are just joining, welcome. Today we will be talking about my 13th Blue's Clues VHS, All Kinds of Signs. This VHS includes signs and geography. First, let's talk about signs. This episode starts out with Steve figuring out what Blue was doing. It turned out she was just saying, "Come on." It's kind of like a sign. Anyway, Blue makes another sign. She makes a sign for her name, Blue. Then she shows another sign of a fork, a plate, and a spoon. It turns out Blue wanted to eat. I don't blame her. I mean, after all, Steve was getting hungry too. The thing is, Blue didn't want to go to the snack table to eat her snack. The question was, where does Blue want to eat her snack? That's when Blue wanted to play Blue's Clues. But first, Steve had to get rid of the paw print. He waved goodbye to the paw print. Another sign. It told the paw print it was time to leave. When Steve went to get his handy-dandy notebook, side table drawer was sleeping. He looked at the sign that said, "Do not disturb," but he got the notebook anyway. And so the game Blue's Clues has begun. The viewer spotted the first clue, which is a green light. After the first clue was found, Steve followed signs to find Blue. She was with Pale, who was trying to figure out the signs Shovel put around to find him. The trouble was, Pale couldn't figure out what the signs meant. We were delighted to help her. The first sign showed an arrow pointing to the right, which meant we had to follow the direction of the arrow. The next sign showed a don't sign over the arrow, pointing to the right, which meant we couldn't follow that arrow. We had to go the other direction. The final sign showed how to get to Shovel. They couldn't swim across, but there was a bridge nearby. So Steve and Pale took the bridge to get to Shovel. And guess what? They found him! After figuring out the signs, the viewer spotted the second clue, which is a door with an arrow. After the second clue was found, Blue holds another sign. It meant it was mail time. Mailbox comes in to tell Steve he has a built-in sign. His flag. When he puts it up, that means he has letters to deliver. In the letter, our friends talk by using sign language. Pretty cool if you ask me. Then Blue skidooed into a book because their friend Jane was calling them. Steve skidooed too. In the book, we are introduced to Jane and her friend Carly, who is deaf. That means she can't hear. And she talks by using her hands for sign language. Steve said we know a little of American Sign Language. Jane then said that she and Carly made up a story and needed Steve to narrate it. The problem was Steve didn't know what the signs meant. The viewer decided to help. Steve learned the signs for eating, walking, scared, and elephant. After the story, Jane and Carly did another sign which meant good job. After helping Jane and Carly, Blue and Steve skidoo home. That's when the viewer spotted the third clue, which is a table. That's also when Steve realized we had all three clues and it was time to sit in the thinking chair. It was time to think. We were trying to figure out where Blue wants to eat her snack, and our clues were a green light, a door with an arrow, and a table. Now a green light means go. A door with an arrow means Blue wants to go outside. A table means, well, a table. The question was, what kind of table is outside? The viewer guessed correctly that Blue wants to eat her snack at the picnic table. At that point, Steve realized we just figured out Blue's clues. After the celebratory song, Steve and Blue went outside to the picnic table and ate their snacks. Shovel and Pale come back to remind us how we helped Pale find Shovel by reading the signs. Jane and Carly come back to remind us of the signs in their story. After a great snack, it was time for So Long, but sing just one more song. Now let's talk about the episode as a whole. I feel like kids can learn a lot if they want to learn about signs. Signs can help a lot. You just have to figure out what they mean. Also, when Blue's Clues introduced a deaf character, it made me realize that deaf character, Carly, was just the same as you and me. We just have to respect for who she is. I remember taking a sign language class during my senior year in high school, and oh boy was it interesting. All in all, it's a good episode. Now let's talk about geography. This episode starts out with Steve asking the viewer how they got to his house. By car or by boat? Neither of those things. It was by television. Then Blue enters the scene and licks the viewer's face. Blue just loves when the viewer comes over for a visit. After saying hello, Blue was hiding. After finding her, Steve asks Blue if she wants to go somewhere. The question was, where does Blue want to go? That's when Blue wanted to play Blue's Clues, but first Steve had to get rid of the paw print. It goes to our left, to our right, and then away. Then Steve and the viewer had to go somewhere. They go to side table drawer, who asks why she is always in the living room. Steve had the answer. The living room is where she lives, and it's her neighborhood. After grabbing the notebook, the game Blue's Clues has begun. Blue placed a map on the ground and Steve picks it up. It turns out it was a map that led to where Blue was. Steve followed the map past the lamp and into the bedroom. That's when the viewer spotted the first clue, which is a building. After finding the first clue, Blue is found by the bed. She places another map in which Steve picks it up. It turns out she was now with Shovel and Pail. So Steve followed the map out to the porch and outside where Blue was by the flowers. This is where we see Shovel and Pail. They were figuring out where to go. They had a map to help them out. We decided to help too. First, Pail wondered where she wants to go if she wanted to mail letters. That's the post office. Then Shovel wondered where he wants to go if he wanted to buy groceries. That's the grocery store. Finally, Shovel wondered where he wants to go if he wanted to save his money. That's the bank. After figuring out where to go, it's mail time. Mailbox enters the scene and says that we were talking about the post office. He loves the post office. All those letters. Speaking of letters, our letters showed our friends following a map of their own neighborhood. After saying goodbye, the viewer spotted the second clue, which is a shelf. After finding the second clue, we needed to find Blue. Another map was found. Steve followed it to find Blue. It turns out she was canoeing into a game. Steve did too. That's when he spotted yet another map. We've just been mapping all day, Steve said. It turns out this was a map challenge. Steve and the viewer were up for it. First, they used a boat to cross the river. Then they used a train to get to the other side of the mountain. Finally, they used their feet to get to the house where Blue and Gingerbread Girl were. After the map challenge, Blue and Steve skidooed back home. That's when the viewer spotted the third clue, which is a book. That's also when Steve realized we had all three clues and it was time to sit in the thinking chair. It was time to think. Excuse me. We were trying to figure out where Blue wants to go, and our clues were a building, a shelf, and a book. Steve wondered what building could Blue want to go to that has bookshelves. The viewer guessed correctly, the library. At that point, Steve realized we just figured out Blue's clues. After the celebratory song, it was time to go to the library. Steve got his hat, Blue got her backpack, and they were off with a map that Shovel and Pail gave to them. They followed the map to the library. When they got there, Steve and Blue were amazed by all the books. Steve picked out a book called Another Really Great Book. Blue picked out so many books. They went to Scanner to scan them. They were due back next week. After a fun day at the library, Steve and Blue used their feet to walk back to the house. Then it was time for So Long, but sing just one more song. Now let's talk about the episode as a whole. I feel like kids can learn a lot if they want to learn about going places and using maps and stuff. Maps are very useful. Nowadays we use what we call GPS, but people can still use maps. Honestly, I love going places. I'm pretty adventurous that way. All in all, it's a good episode. Now before I forget, I'd like to say this. This VHS includes Steve and Marley Matlin teaching us how to sign. At the beginning, we signed their favorite colors, green and orange. At the end, we signed "Thank you for helping me." There's even a skit about them where Steve learned sign language when picking out a book. Learning sign language is really cool. So yeah, that's all kinds of signs. If you would like to play again, just go back to the beginning of this episode. And remember, you can do anything that you want to do. Bye!